Friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel named Computer, the Way of Life. I hope you all are well aware regarding the use of computers. As per requirements, when we have to purchase a system, most of us are unable to take the proper decision. We simply focus on the brand, speed, memory size and cost, but at the same time ignoring the performance of the system. For a common man, it is also difficult to realize the difference in performance. This video, titled Processor and their Types, is an effort to provide an idea to the students and common mass regarding the concept of processor, their functioning and objective of designing different types of processors. I hope you all will watch this video till last. That will enlighten your general perception regarding computer. Before discussing processor and the types, we must have a clear idea about the working of a computer. Generally, a computer includes input unit, central processing unit and output unit. Here the term CPU is used interchangeably with processor and are responsible for all the tasks that a system has to execute. But technically, it is not correct, as because CPU is just one of the processors inside a computer. In computing, processing unit or processor is an electronic or digital circuit responsible for all the tasks that a system has to perform. A processor receives input from input devices in the form of a program instructions, process them as per the arithmetical or logical instructions and provide the output as per the user's interface. In other words, we can say a processor is responsible for all the instructions or operations created by hardware or operating system till final delivery of result. Now it's the time to discuss processor in details. In computing, processor or processing unit is the brain of any digital circuit responsible for all the tasks that a system has to perform. It is an integrated circuit placed in computers and other electronic components responsible for all the operations that a system has to perform. Each time an operation performed on a computer, the processor must interpret the operating system or the instructions given by the software. A processor is constituted of one or more individual processing units called cores. It is made of four basic components, namely arithmetical logical unit, floating point unit, registers and cache memory. Here ALU execute all the arithmetical and logical operations. Floating point unit is also called coprocessor, helps to manipulate mathematical calculations for basic and advanced arithmetic and logic operations on numbers. Register stores all instructions and data and it fires operands to ALU and saves the output of all operations, whereas cache memories are small and fast memories that store copies of data for frequent use and saves time. It acts similar to a random access memory. Each individual core processes instructions from a single computing task at a certain speed, termed as clock speed and measured in gigahertz. It can manage all instructions, that is input-output, arithmetical, logical and other basic instructions created by hardware or operating system. There are many companies manufacturing processors. Among them, Apple, Intel, IBM, AMD, Samsung, Motorola, Acer, Dell, HP are commonly used. Next, we discuss the operation of a CPU. To meet the variety of requirements, different types of processors are designed. Whatever may be the requirement, the basic operation that a processor has to undergo include four major steps of instruction cycle, that is fetch, decode, execute and write back. Here fetching is the process to retrieve instructions usually from RAM. Decode converts the instruction into signals to the other components of the computer. Then finally, the decoded instructions are sent to each component to perform the desired operation, and after executing all operations, the results are moved to write back. In the adjacent diagram, you can have a look of that. Next is performance of a processor. Each individual core processes instructions from a single computing task at a certain speed termed as clock speed and measured in gigahertz. It can manage all instructions created by hardware or operating system. The speed of processor cannot go beyond a particular limit. So meet these challenges, modern computers are using several cores or processors that can execute multiple tasks at a time simultaneously, such as dual core, quad core, multi-core, etc. The performance of processor is measured in terms of its ability to perform number 1, processes the number of instructions at a given time, number 2, relative clock speed, and number 3, maximum number of bits or instructions. Now it's a time to discuss about types of processors. Nowadays, to meet the increasing requirements, more than one processors are used simultaneously in a computer, basing on their functioning and the task they perform. Processors are basically categorized under 5 heads. Number 1, single core processor. Number 2, dual core processor. Number 3, quad core processor. Number 4, octa core processor. And number 5, multi-core processor. We will discuss one after another in subsequent slides. First, we start with single core processor. A single core processor system contains only one processor and designed to perform only one operation at a time. In this, one process can be executed at a time selected from the ready queue by using first in first out pattern, that is, operations goes to CPU for processing according to their priority base, and the other operations has to wait until first operation is complete. Single core processor is mostly used in general purpose computers and were used in traditional computers. These processors are not compatible with multiple tasking and degrade the performance of an entire computer system. Here in figure 1 shows the internal view of a single core process that contains registers and cache that is communicating with memory and input output with bus, whereas figure 2 describes the working of a single core processor. In this, we can observe there are multiple applications as application 1, application 2 and subsequently application end, and they need to execute. But as the system contains a single processor, it can process only one process at a time in the order they appear, that is by using FIFO pattern. Next is dual core processor, a system in which there are two separate physical processors contained in the same cabinet, termed as dual core processor. In this, both the processors can be installed on a single motherboard or on separate boards, each having their own resources like local cache and controller, linked with each other through correct sockets. In a dual core processor, each core handles incoming data strings simultaneously, and this is possible due to the operating system that is able to recognize multi-threading, and the software must have simultaneous multi-threading technology written into its code. In this, every processor has their own resources, so when one core is executing, the other core can be accessing the system bus or executing its own code. It is faster than single core processor that can be realized during multitasking operations. Commonly used dual core processors are Intel Core Duo, AMD X2, dual core PowerPC G5 and many more. In the adjacent diagram, you can have a internal structure of a dual core processor. Now it's the time to discuss quad core and octa core processor. First, quad core processor. A quad core processor is a high power CPU having 4 different cores combined into one processor. In this, each core has its own independent cache, register and input output ports, capable to execute and process all instructions of its own without taking support from the other left out processor. These core processors are able to execute massive instructions at a time without getting waiting pool. Quad core processor is compatible with parallel processing, which helps to enhance the processing power of computer system. Its performance depends on their computing components, that is hardware, then octa-core processor. As the name suggests, the octa-core processor is made up of 8 processor cores. It is designed to facilitate multiprocessor architecture that can carry out more advanced tasks such as handling high resolution videos and graphic heavy games etc. It can produce higher processing speed and boost up the efficiency of our central processing unit. It has the ability to perform multiple tasks at a time. These processors are mostly used in our smartphones. In the adjacent diagram, we can have a look of quad-core processor and octa-core processor. At last, we will discuss about multi-core processor. It is designed to use various processing units, that is, cores on one chip. In this, every core processor is able to perform their all tasks independently. For example, if you are doing multiple activities at the same time, they like listening music and doing some typing work by using MS Office, then one core handles the music applications and other core manages the typing works by using MS Office. In the adjacent diagram, you can observe there are 4 different cores. They all have their individual memories and they have a shared memory and they are connected through a bus interface. After a detailed discussion, we can conclude processor is the brain of any digital circuit responsible for all the tasks that a system has to perform. To perform every operation, a system must interpret the operating system or the instructions given by the software. The performance of computer or other electronic device solely depends on its processor. By knowing the different approaches of designing a processor, an user can select a system which contains the most appropriate processor that can meet their requirements in a best possible manner. With this, I remain. Hope you all have enjoyed it. Thank you for your patient hearing. Also suggest the topic of interest you want to explain me in future.